Welcome to Who Cares, where we honor those who bridge divides and light up relationships quietly and consistently. I'm Dr. Wendy Solovich, and today we're joined by DeeDee Moore, founder of More Than Grand, who's here to talk not just about cookies and cuddles, but navigating complex family dynamics with grace and intention. Let's dive in. Welcome to Who Cares, the podcast that embarks on a profound journey into the heart of empathy and indifference in our modern era. Each episode of Who Cares brings you insightful conversations with a diverse array of guests from various industries and walks of life. But Who Cares goes beyond individual stories. We dive into the larger societal and psychological undercurrents that have led to a perceived decline in collective empathy. Who Cares isn't just a podcast. It's a powerful call to action for reigniting the spirit of empathy within each of us. Let's find the answer to who cares together. Welcome to Who Cares. I'm really interested in, you said you were a military spouse.
Yes.
Full time.
Yes.
And, I'm for more than 20 years. Wow.
Yeah.
So did that have a lot of influence on what you decided to do with grandparenting?
I think it did in the way that we learned very quickly as a military spouse. We always joked that the Marine Corps' motto was Semper Fi and the Marine Corps wives' motto was Semper Gumby, because you just never knew what the Marine Corps was going to throw at you, right? You never knew where you were going to live. You never knew when you were going to have to move. And so we got really good at making things work and going with the flow.
Yeah.
And I think that, it really helped me when I decided to start More Than Grand, because I knew that, okay, if I need to do this, I can figure out how to do it, right? I can figure out the pieces I need to make this work.
Yeah.
And it also helped me, we did move from community to community, and we were continually having to create those relationships in a new place and look for support in a new place. And it really, I think, helps me to understand the struggles that people are going through when they don't have the support that they need.
Yeah. So you probably learned all kinds of different communication styles doing that, because living in different neighborhoods and communicating with different people, you
different
had to.
parts of the country, different parts of the world. Yes,
right.
You realize that everybody has a unique perspective, right? You can't assume that the way you look at the world is the right way, right? And so it really is important to understand the perspective of the person that you're trying to create a relationship with.
Yeah. So I'm very interested in the journey to More Than Grand and what was the first step? How did that get started? How did you know that was the platform for you?
It was kind of half luck, and it was a very gradual thing. When I became a grandparent, literally the day after my youngest child graduated from high school. She graduated from high school on Friday. On Saturday, I was a grandmother from my son, and so that shift in my identity. Right? Suddenly, I'm not just a mom. In fact, my active mothering days are pretty much over. I'm facing the empty nest syndrome, right? And now I'm a grandmother. What does that mean? Mm-hmm. Where can I find out more about that, right? Where can I find out how to create a good relationship with my grandchild and my son and daughter-in-law as they become parents? And I couldn't find anything. There wasn't a website out there that really addressed that. So I started a blog, and I started writing articles that I thought would be of interest to other new grandparents. And I did a lot of research for it by spending a lot of time on parent forums and on grandparent forums to see what they were talking about, see what the struggles they were having with these relationships. And what I found was there was a huge disconnect between what parents were wishing that grandparents would do and what grandparents were seeing as the barriers to the relationship. And so I thought, okay, well, here's an opportunity, right? This is what grandparents need to be able to understand the parent's perspective. Let's focus on that on on this blog, and the reception that I got from parents was overwhelming.
Really?
I went to a
From parents, not
from
grandparents.
parents. They're like,
Ah.
oh my gosh, I wish I had found this when I first had my baby, because this
Yeah.
could have helped my parents so much to be the grandparents that I needed them to be. And grandparents too have found it, amazing. But I think the validation I got from parents was what made me realize how needed it was.
Yeah.
How needed it was.
Do you think that was mostly because they didn't know how to tell their parents what they needed?
I think there are two things that are working against them. First, there is that relationship, right? In the parent-child relationship, there's always that dynamic is always going to be there, and a lot of parents either are hesitant to say anything, or they go the opposite direction and just become so, demanding about what they need, what they want, what their rules are.
Yeah.
That it makes that relationship worse instead of better.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, grandparents are getting really, really toxic messages from society about what it means to be a grandparent. Spoil them and send them home.
Yeah.
Grandma's house,
Yeah.
grandma's rules.
Right.
So grandparents are overwhelmingly getting messages that their job is to ignore what parents say and do what they want. Breaking rules is fine because they're the grandparent.
Right.
And so those two things make it really hard for the relationship to proceed in a healthy way.
Well, even to the extent that they probably wouldn't have done that with their own children, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and half the time you ask them, you'll hear the response from grandparents that, well, this is what my this is what my mother-in-law did,
Yeah.
so just deal with it.
Yeah.
Whereas, really the more logical conclusion to come to from that is, I hated it when she did this, so I'm not going to do this to you, right?
Yeah,
But
right.
that's not how it plays out a lot of the time.
Yeah. So you were seeing that you were getting a lot of feedback from the parents
From
on
the
your
parents
on the blog.
on the blog, and in person. Like when
Okay.
when I told people what I was doing, overwhelmingly, I got such positive feedback. I actually went to a conference after I'd been doing it for about 2 years, and I told my husband before I went, I'm like, I'm so afraid that I'm going to go to this conference and I'm going to tell people what I'm writing about, and their eyes are going to glaze over, and they're going to look for somebody more interesting to talk to, and I had the absolute opposite experience,
Really? Yeah.
where to the point where I had people stopping me. I had somebody stop me on the street. Are you DeeDee? I heard about what you're doing. It's amazing. So
That's terrific.
it was very validating, and I've just worked really hard to get across to both parents and grandparents. I have a course that I offer for grandparents that teaches them all the things that parents want them to know. Modern baby care and safety, and new trends in parenting, because things have changed. I mean, there's a lot that's changed. And also how to have the conversations with today's parents, understanding them, understanding what they're dealing with, so that you can be supportive in the ways that they need. Right now I'm working on a companion piece to that for parents to help them understand grandparents and what grandparents are dealing with. The message, as I spoke about before, the messages that they're getting about what it means to be a grandparent. And what their experience was when they were parents. For all of time, grandparents were a source of wisdom. And, when you had a problem, you went to your mom, you went to your pediatrician. You didn't turn to Google.
Right.
Today's grandparents are the first generation that really are not needed for that wisdom. And that is a very hard shift. And what parents are doing a lot of the times are making grandparents feel completely irrelevant, right?
wow.
Like, you can come in and babysit, you can come in and play with my child, but I don't really need you other than that.
Yeah.
And, everybody wants to feel like they're important in a relationship, so.
What do you think are the key aspects for grandparents to feel needed or important in their grandchild's life?
I think to, as I said, they've been that source of wisdom. They do have valuable experience. Yeah, they may not be up to date on the latest feeding trends or the latest, research on play-based learning or whatever, but they do understand how to calm a baby. They do understand that some of the things that you are worrying about so much right now are not going to matter, 3, 10, 15 years from now.
Right.
They really can be a very good source of emotional support if you let them.
Yeah. Well, one thing I noticed, I think, in my experience with parents and grandparents, having a son that's about to turn 25 next week, is that was about presence. And
Yes.
that my parents were much more adept at being present
Yes.
in the moment.
Yes.
And I was, flustered and worried about all different things going on. And, and really, as I look back on it now, things that weren't important, and that how important it was for him to get that focus and that attention to whatever he was doing in the moment. And it didn't matter what he was doing. They just followed him.
Yeah.
And both sets of grandparents did that for him on both sides of the family. And, and I think it was such a great reminder or a lesson for me in terms of focusing on the time that I have with him.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
how valuable that is.
And that is what a grandparent brings to a child, right?
Yeah.
We're not the ones that are reminding you to brush your teeth. We're not the ones that are reminding you, yelling at you to get your room cleaned up for the 15th time.
Yeah.
We're the ones that just come in and want to listen to you and want to interact with you and want to hear how your day has been and what's on your heart, right?
Right.
So, that's such a gift to a child.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, just to have you side by side and have your full attention is such a big deal.
Absolutely.
And then I remember my own grandmother being thrilled when she would come over and prepping the house and getting ready for her to come. And I couldn't wait for her to come through the door because, you knew that you were the apple of their eye, I think.
Right.
Yeah,
Every child needs to feel like they have somebody who is 100% in their corner, no matter what.
Yeah,
and a grandparent can be that in a way. Obviously, parents can be that too, right?
Yeah.
But there is that layer of separation between parent and grandparent can be really important for a child.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, too, what I've seen in my clinical work over the years, too, is the challenge of boundary setting.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering how that shows up for you in your work.
Yeah, it's huge. And I think that there is, I don't want to say a trend. People always think that means, something flashy
Something
and it's
new.
going to go away,
Yeah.
right? No, but there is a statistical trend to parents setting stricter boundaries with grandparents, to really focusing more on this is the way our child will be raised, and if you don't follow these guidelines,
Oh, wow.
we don't want you around.
Yeah.
I see a lot of that. Granted, I see a lot of that on social media, right? I'm not, I don't see it as much in the real world, though I do have friends whose kids have cut them off because they didn't, agree to, no, it's never something frivolous,
Yeah.
but it is sometimes something that's really not that important in the big scheme of things.
Yeah,
And that's just heartbreaking to me because as you said, the value for the child is there, whether the grandparents are following your strict boundaries or not. Now, obviously, in a relationship that's abusive, in a relationship that there's emotional manipulation, but I do see a lot of parents who are cutting grandparents off in the name of protecting their mental health. It's not, to me. And again, I'm a layperson, I am not a therapist, but to me, good mental health means that you are able to handle difficulties, not that you cut them out of your life.
Right.
And I think that even if you're teaching your child that the thing to do when somebody disagrees with you, when you have trouble managing somebody,
Cut them out.
cut them out, I don't think that's a really healthy thing to teach them.
Yeah. Well, not only for the child, but I think for the parent too, is you're doing yourself a disservice of a great amount of support if you
Yeah.
could learn to communicate,
Right,
the
right.
appropriate boundaries
Exactly.
and what you need. And I think that's probably half of it is people having difficulty, just in maybe in their own general life, not being able to communicate what their needs are. And
Yeah.
so when it comes to this, and it is family is harder, I think
Family is
sometimes.
always harder.
It's harder to say what you want. And
Yes,
who you
yes.
especially as you tread your own waters with parenting. And
Sure.
I think, your own fears probably come up around child raising and am I
Yes.
doing, a good job and,
Right.
and all that.
Right.
So you might feel that extra pressure from
Yeah.
the outside that maybe isn't even there, but, in your mind,
Right.
it's
Right.
it's overwhelming or can be overwhelming.
Absolutely. And I do see, I think that one of the real downsides of social media and the internet is the amount of information that's coming at parents about how to do things, right? There's this, I think, there's always been a struggle for parents, like, am I doing the right thing? Am I, is this the right, am I raising this child right? Is this going to work? But until now, we've never had a generation of parents who has been continually reminded about
That's true.
this is what perfect parenting looks like, right? And the bottom line is there is no perfect way to parent.
Right.
I'm sorry to tell all these parents who are thinking that they're doing exactly the right thing. Their kids are going to be in therapy just like everybody else has been.
Yeah.
So
And that's not always a bad thing.
it's not a bad
No,
thing. It's
yeah.
not a bad thing. I see a lot of people saying, well, boomers all need therapy, and they never accepted that they needed that. But there's been a huge shift in how therapy is viewed. There was a definite stigma about seeking mental health support.
Just in general, right?
Just in general.
Yeah.
I think that really only changed maybe 15 years ago. Insurance didn't cover it, right?
Right.
So it was something you had to be wealthy enough to pay for.
Right.
So there's a shift around how mental health support is viewed, and it's not that we didn't need it or think that it was good. It's just something that it wasn't available in the way that it is now.
Yeah. So how long has More Than Gran been going? When did you start?
I started it about 5 years ago.
Okay.
As I said, originally just kind of as a blog. And after about a year, I realized this is a business. If I want to keep doing this and afford to have all of these tools to help me make this, have the impact that I'd like to have. So I, formed a business and have been working at trying to keep it afloat since then. So I have a few things for sale and get some affiliate income, just enough to pay the bills. And, and it's been good.
What do you find that people are most interested in?
I think that grandparents really do want to support parents, right? They really want ways to support parents and communicate with them and do a better job of understanding what parents are going through. They also, of course, want ways to interact with their grandchildren. I don't provide a lot of that on my website because, there's Pinterest, there are a million other activity-oriented websites.
Yeah.
But I do have some things to help with the communication piece especially. So, I sell some grandparent love letter templates that grandparents love because they can write that letter, which, I mean, I don't care how old you are, whether you're 2 or 50, getting a letter in the mail makes you know that somebody really loves you, right? Somebody has taken time out of their day.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Any plans for a book?
No plans for a book, which is so funny because I am a writer at heart, but I have just never. I feel like I can have more impact. Every time I go in a bookstore, there is not even a single grandparenting book on the shelves. There are lots of them out there, but there's something that you really have to go and find. So, and there's some wonderful ones out there. So I don't feel the
Okay.
need to dip my toe in that water yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's still kind of new, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
who knows? Who knows
Yeah.
what'll happen?
Yeah.
Who knows what'll happen?
So, over the years, any special stories that stick out that you remember and want to share?
Oh gosh, I don't know if there are any particular ones, but every once in a while I will get an email or a message on Instagram saying, I started following you and I asked my mom, I shared some of your videos with my mom, and so she started following you, and she's changed. Like the things that she was doing before that made it really hard to have a good relationship, she now understands, like, this is why I've asked her to do that. And so that is, I mean, knowing that people are taking this to heart. I got one that said, my biggest regret is that I didn't find you until my grandson was 6 months old, and I had made so many mistakes already. But now, we're turning things around, and so it's hugely gratifying.
Yes.
It's hugely gratifying.
Very inspirational.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Wonderful.
So, every time I have one of those days where I get lambasted on TikTok for something I've said in a video, I go back and read one of the emails where somebody is, telling me,
Really?
yeah.
How could somebody?
All it takes is somebody taking one of your words wrong,
Yeah.
and then once one person leaves a comment, there's just this need to pile on.
That's social media.
That's social media. Yes. So
Yeah. So how do you protect yourself from those kinds of things? Because you really are putting yourself out there.
yeah, it's taken. The first time that it happened, that they really piled on, it was like, this is really uncomfortable, and I spent a couple days really feeling ugly. It hurt.
Yeah.
Even though I knew it wasn't really personal,
Yeah.
it still was very difficult. And then I was reading a book, and it talked about this phenomenon of piling on, right? And I'm like, okay, so it wasn't so. This is just something that happens,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Here's a very good explanation of why it happens, and that helped a lot. Again, thinking about it from a different perspective, which is always helpful. So now, I'll post a video that won't land the way I hoped it landed. And I've learned to just stop reading the comments. And, I'm not going to spend time trying to respond to them. I do listen to what they're saying, right? Because if this many people didn't hear that right, then I didn't express myself as well as I could have. I don't take the video down. I just, use that as a learning experience for the next time. So
That's good. Yeah.
And I think also it helps to have the perspective of years, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm old enough so that this is not a huge part of my identity, right?
Yeah.
I am not reliant on how people see me on Instagram for my whole identity. So that's helpful too.
Yeah. I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Because many people are, I think, and that's where it gets a little dangerous.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in terms of the parent-grandparent relationship, what do you think is the biggest challenge that you're seeing now?
I think the biggest challenge is communication.
It is.
And that's true of any relationship, right?
Yeah.
People just are not taking the time to really have, sometimes they're hard conversations, right? But they're not taking the time to try to understand the other's perspective, to try to understand what's important, what their priorities are, so that they can have a healthy relationship and so that they can be there for each other. And I think that, the world we live in today, we're so quick to jump to black or white and not spend any time in the middle.
Yeah.
That it's the things that are hard between parents and grandparents are the same things that are hard between all of us right now in the world.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We feel this need to protect our viewpoint, even though really what would really help us if we spent a little more time trying to understand the viewpoint.
Couldn't agree with you more.
of those around us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is very cut off and very black and white,
Yeah.
and not a
Yeah.
lot of people listening to each other. It's
Right.
more.
And I think that that's one of the things that motivates me to keep doing this, is that if we could just heal that at home, seeing this affecting families is heartbreaking to me.
Yeah.
And if I could help people understand this just in the family setting, just in the conversation between parents and grandparents, maybe that's going to teach them a little bit more empathy that they can carry out from there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that's great. Yeah, I would agree with that. So you center your work on 5 core values: kindness, respect, honesty, education, and common sense. How do these values shape the way you guide families, especially in emotionally charged moments?
I think that starting from a place of kindness is always going to be helpful, right? You really need to think about whether what you're saying is kind, and that helps me just when I get these comments on Instagram, right? It's like, okay, well, I could say that, but that's not very kind.
Yeah.
So if I can't think of a kind way to put that, then I'm not going to say anything at all.
Yeah.
But no, and I think that that's something that those were the two, kindness and respect were the two things that I wanted to teach my children more than anything. Because I think that if you can embody those two things in your dealings with the world and your dealings with other people, then you're going to make them feel better, and you're going to have a more gratifying relationship with them.
Yeah.
So I think those are the two main things. And, the common sense one, I'll get people saying on my videos, well, that's just common sense. I'm like, yes, it really is, but it still needs to be said.
Yes.
Because as we all know, common sense is not always common.
We forget.
And we do. We
Yeah.
forget in the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
We forget in the moment. So
Well, especially when something's emotionally charged.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's hard when you are faced with an emotionally charged situation. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just step back. Say, listen, I know we need to have this conversation, but I need a break right now, and we need to step back. And that's the kindest thing you can do for both of you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I remembered what I wanted to ask you. Has your relationship or your perspective on grandparenting for yourself changed a lot since you started this?
It's really interesting because I came into grandparenting, just as an extension of my role as mother, right?
Yeah.
I have learned so much in the research that I've done for More Than Grand about what will be helpful, about ways that that the priorities that my son and his wife have around the grandchildren. It's allowed me to be a much more understanding and helpful grandparent, because I know I know what the trends are in parenting. I
Yeah.
understand what they mean when they are, trying to work their child through a tantrum in a way that is very different from how I would have done it. In fact, I can remember a conversation with my husband at one point. He said something to our grandson. I'm like, no, we don't say that anymore. Like, that's not. He's like, what? I'm like, no, we don't.
No,
This isn't
yeah.
how we approach that situation. This is what we need to do instead. And he's like, okay. And I realized at that point, like,
Yeah.
I'm doing all this reading and
Yeah.
education, and like I'm leaving him out of the loop entirely on it. So I put his name on my email list, so he gets my emails every
good.
week, so he can know. He can be
That's
informed
great.
also. So
I bet your kids really appreciate that.
I have a very good relationship with my daughter-in-law and my son.
That's
and
terrific.
it's really helpful because I can step in ways that I wouldn't be able to. Now, obviously, you don't need to be running a grandparenting site to be able to do
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
there was a time about a year and a half ago, my daughter-in-law got very ill, and I was able to step in and help out, and things were pretty seamless with the kids. They actually, Mama was not available for a long time. She was either in bed or in the hospital for a period of weeks. But I knew how to interact with them, right? And that, I think, helped them feel very stable in this difficult situation.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. Yeah, really great. So I'm curious, for the future of grandparenting, post-pandemic.
Yeah.
Things are so different.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people up in arms around politics and
Yes.
all kinds of things happening, and children seeing a lot of things that they probably, children, our children and us never saw growing up.
Yeah.
What do you think the future of grandparenting is going to be like?
I think that the role of a grandparent will continue to be what it's always been, which is that safe place for a child. I think grandparents have the opportunity to be that calm place when the seas are rough, to be that harbor where the children can come and just feel loved and forget about all of the other things that are going on in the world right now. And I think that grandparents can be that for parents as well. A reminder that, yes, we went through hard things too, and you can do this.
Yeah.
So I think that will always be the most important role for a grandparent.
Yeah. It's kind of like you're the stones in the stream.
Yeah.
The water goes through you, and it just, you stay, you're their rock.
You can be that rock.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Well, is there anything more that you wanted to share with us that I may have not asked about, or?
I can't think of anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's been great. I really appreciate all this information, and it's such a neat field, a whole different, I hope you plan to do more with it and develop it and see what comes of it. And we would love to check in with you from time to time and see, what's new.
I'd love that. I'd love that. Yeah, no, I feel like, as I said, when I started looking for grandparenting resources out there, there wasn't a grandparent website that addressed what new grandparents needed to know.
Yeah.
And so I feel very fortunate to be able to fill that gap.
We need the what to expect when you're grandparenting.
Well, exactly, and that's what I tell people. Yeah, it's like the bump, but for new grandparents, not for new parents. Right? I've got all the information you need right there in this one spot.
That's terrific. That's
Yeah.
terrific. So I can imagine with Google and all the other information websites that we have to look up information, it must be really difficult to compete with that as a grandparent and a parent.
Yeah. It is. And as a grandparent, it's hard to convince. You don't want to go to parents and say, ignore everything on the internet. Just listen to me, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to hear that.
Right.
But I think that you can try to help parents understand, well, maybe, where are you getting this information from? And try to go understand where the parents are getting their information so that you can then come back and say, hey, I saw this video about that, and I know that that's what you're doing, but did you ever think about it from this perspective? Now, not everybody's going to be, open to that.
Yeah.
So you definitely need to gauge your relationship. I know I feel super fortunate. My son and daughter-in-law are not on social media. They do not listen to all of that stuff. My daughter-in-law does read every single parenting book there is, but so to come in with your advice is hard. The only thing you can do is to say, would you like my perspective on that? I think always asking.
So inviting it.
Asking if your advice is welcomed.
Yeah.
And accepting it if they say no thanks.
Okay.
No. But
Okay.
yeah, I would absolutely ask up front, because they are more likely to listen to the mommy influencer, or the pediatrician on
Right.
Instagram, or hopefully their pediatrician, right?
Yeah.
But it can be really helpful to follow the same accounts that they're following, so you can see what they are.
Understand better.
It
Yeah.
really helps you understand what they're up against.
So it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, but you know
Yeah.
what? This is one thing that really, really, I try to get across to grandparents. This is one of the most fulfilling, most important roles you'll ever have in life. And yet it's the one role in life that grandparents feel they do not need to prepare for.
Yeah. Right.
Nobody says,
Yeah.
oh, well, I'm going to be a grandparent. I need to study up on how to do that right. I'm going to find out what I need to know. No, everybody just assumes they can do it, even though they've never done it before, right?
Yeah.
And your experience as a parent is not necessarily relevant to your role as a grandparent. It is a new role, and it's worth diving into. How do I do this well?
Yeah. That's terrific. So, to shift gears here a little bit, we're both business owners, women business owners, and you were mentioning you went to a conference and you went from feeling like, is this the right thing? Should I be doing this? Is it? And then someone noticed you or someone pointed you out, and was that initially shocking to you, or?
It was a very new role for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big shift because I have always been the behind the scenes person. I've always, stay-at-home mom is not exactly a flashy role.
Yes,
and then,
yes.
When I started doing work, I was maybe the receptionist or I became a communications consultant. But again, that's behind the scenes. I'm sharing, I'm putting the words out there, but there's somebody coming from someone else, right? So when I think that a lot of women struggle with that midlife, life is different, the kids are all raised, how do I find myself? I don't think I ever had to struggle with that because it was I kind of just glided into it with this. It is incredibly fulfilling to me to have found this outlet for what I consider my strengths. I'm a good writer. I really like to listen to people. I like to understand people, and I like to help people communicate with each other better. That was the most fulfilling part of being a communications consultant, was helping people get their story across so that other people could hear it and understand it. So it's very fulfilling to know that I'm able to use the parts of me that are important to me to really help other people. And to see that grow.
Well, it can really, I think for me, it threw me off a little because I think at some point there's a shift that happens where you're seen as the expert.
Right.
And you're looking like, who? What?
Absolutely. Yes. No, I did a webinar with someone who's a parenting expert, and she wrote the page for the webinar signups, and it said grandparenting expert, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like me? But I have studied a lot about it. I have spent a lot of time learning, and I never position myself as somebody who knows it all. I'm somebody who's sharing what I've learned. Right? I'm sharing, I'm looking for research, I'm looking for resources and trying to put them together so that they can help you have the conversations you need to have.
Which is essential to be a good leader, right?
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
Getting that information out. Yeah, that's terrific. Well, thank you. I really appreciate knowing that. That's, very, very good information.
Thank you.
Yeah.